Hi, everyone, and welcome to the People's Food Summit 2024. This is the European segment. My name is Precious Piri. I am the African coordinator for Regeneration International, whose privilege has been to host the European segment this year. I'm also very grateful for your time today. We are bringing you lots of amazing stories from the beautiful continent of Europe. In our segment today, we are going to really explore how the regenerative movement in Europe has been moving, going forward in collaborations. They are going to share stories of farmers, policymakers, how they've been coming together to explore how everyone can work together to really collaborate and synergize in a meaningful way that will have us form powerful pockets of regenerating landscapes and effectively communicating. We're also going to learn from institutions and academies and how they are centers of bringing everyone together who is interested in regeneration. We're going to learn a lot from the organic movement as well. We're going to learn and really hear and indulge in stories of design, regenerative design, what is needed and what are those conversations that we're supposed to be having, especially in the times that we're facing and given all the targets that we have on the European continent going forward. So I'm just going to welcome you and really ask you to just enjoy, settle in, and have a lovely day. Happy World Food Day. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ashleigh Brown and I am the Knowledge Exchange and Learning Coordinator for Ecosystem Restoration Communities, which is a grassroots movement of initiatives around the world that are restoring degraded ecosystems, both through ecosystem restoration, rewilding and regenerative agriculture. And this movement is very inspiring. There are now 80 initiatives around the world, and it was born 7 years ago when a man called John D. Liu came up with, he had a recurring dream. He's an ecologist and a filmmaker, and he spent a lot of his time documenting large-scale ecosystem restoration projects around the world, such as the Loess Plateau project in China, which has restored an area the size of Belgium. And he had been meeting lots and lots of people around the world that wanted to, A, restore their land, but didn't know how and didn't have the labour or the money to do so. And on the other side, there were a lot of people that he was meeting, young people living in cities, feeling really disconnected from our ecosystems and very concerned about climate change and really wanting to do something. And so he came up with this idea to bring the two groups together. And it was originally called Ecosystem Restoration Camps, with the idea being that people would come and camp on land that needed to be restored. And then when they were there, they would learn how to do it and that they would all do it together. And he kept having this dream to the point where he wrote down this idea in the Permaculture magazine, and it was published. Lots of people saw it, came together and created this organization. And I was one of those people. I don't have a background in ecology, I have a background in international development, but I felt so scared about climate collapse and really wanted to do something and didn't know what to do. I discovered ecosystem restoration through John Liu's documentary called Green Gold. And it totally changed my life, from being really scared and quite depressed to being really hopeful and active. I reached out to John on Facebook, didn't expect him to respond, and he invited me to the working group that became the Ecosystem Restoration Camps, now Communities movement. And this movement does a lot for food security. And I'm going to share some stories from the ERCs themselves later about how they do that. One of which is called Henbant, and it's in Wales, which is where I am now. And you might not be able to imagine the fact that this is a farm, but it is. And it's a really inspiring story, which I'll tell you a bit later on. So the Ecosystem Restoration Communities movement, it functions like a network, and we, like I said earlier, we have 80 initiatives around the world that are all grassroots, community-based initiatives, organisations that were started by someone who could tell that the land around them was dying and really wanted to do something about it. It's a real movement of everyday people who are just rolling up their sleeves and getting on with it, getting on with fixing the world. And that's what I find so inspiring about it, because clearly we can't wait for governments to take action, and we need everyone all around the world to be doing this at the same time right now. It needs to become the defining act of humanity. You know, it needs to be our top priority if we're going to continue to live on this planet in a stable way. So the way that the foundation works, we have a central foundation that is made up of 10 people, and those 10 people, including myself, all have expertise in different areas that we can offer to the ERC initiatives that may not have access to them otherwise. Through our connection with John and all of the other people that we know, we have an amazing advisory council of people that are really pioneers in this work, and people who have really been doing it for a long time and really know how to do it, and they can share their knowledge and wisdom with us. We have professional fundraisers, we have professional education specialists like me who help the ERCs to create trainings so that they can scale out their impact. We have people who can help with communications and promotion. So we get approached by large global newspapers like The Guardian and The Resurgence, The Ecologist, who want to share the stories of these initiatives, who otherwise wouldn't have access to these sorts of global media companies. We help the ERCs collect data so that we can gather a global data set to share with universities and policymakers on how the positive impacts that ecosystem restoration is having on our world. And we also connect the ERCs with each other so that we can foster this collaborative knowledge exchange between all of these initiatives on what has worked for them and what hasn't, what has been challenging, what solutions have they found to fix X, Y, and Z problems, and how can that information be shared so that an ERC struggling with desertification in Kenya can try a tree planting technique that has worked in a desertified area in Mexico, for instance. So it's a really, really vibrant community of people. And our strategy now is all about scaling out, as I said earlier. And what I mean by that is that there are all of these ERC initiatives restoring land around them that are acting like lighthouses in a way that they can lead the way and show the way for other landowners in their region, in their country, who want to do the same thing. And so we have lots of human scale initiatives that are feeding their communities and stabilizing climates, restarting water cycles, stopping flooding and drought, and drawing down a lot of carbon. And I am personally really excited about this scaling out idea. I think that we need places where people come back to the land, and that can only really happen with lots of smaller scale initiatives rather than large top-down ones. It's a lot more resilient if we have loads of actors collaborating and popping up all over the place, rather than a few large initiatives where if something happens and it fails, then you know it's not as resilient or as stable a strategy. And one of the ways that we're doing that is by supporting these ERCs to create trainings where they can train people specifically who live in their region or their country, by giving them context-specific information on how to find land, on how to finance that land, how to grow food in certain ways that are restorative for the ecosystem. So, for example, right now I'm at a place called Henbant, which has joined the ERC movement recently. And this is a small farm that is having a really big impact. It's using just a couple of acres of land to produce veg for 80 families in their area. They also have beautiful agroforestry systems, some areas that you can't really even tell you're on a farm because they're so wild, like this one here. There's a lot of thorny scrub, There's loads of food plants for our invertebrates, loads of birds, and yeah, if every farm was like this, then I just don't think we would have a problem with climate change or with food security. And what I'm doing with them is supporting them to create a training for people living in the UK that's specifically about how to do this, how to create your own henband farm. Because many young people want to learn, they want to know how they can get out from the city. They know that their lives are unsustainable and unhealthy, and they really want to do something to give themselves a healthier, happier lifestyle, as well as have an impact on climate change and future food and water security issues. So we're bringing together all of the experts in this field from the UK and beyond to teach them how to do that, with the idea that it multiplies the number of ERC henbands that there are around the UK and hopefully beyond. And it's just one of 80 initiatives. So imagine the impact of doing that if every ERC did that, and that's what we're aiming for. We already have a rewilding training in Devon that's trained 100 people already on how to create their own rewilding projects, 50 people every year. Imagine 50 new rewilding projects in the UK every year. We've also got a project in Spain called Altiplano, which is restoring highly desertified land in the south of Spain. They have a training now for Spanish people on how to replicate these ecosystem restoration projects. So that's what we mean by scaling out, and we're really excited about it, and it's really working. So now I want to be a bit more personal and tell you some more stories about the ERCs themselves. The first one that I want to share with you is called Habiba, and Habiba is based in Egypt. And the reason that this story is inspiring is, well, there's many reasons, but it was started by a man called Maged, who used to work in the tourism industry. And he lives in the South Sinai, which is an area that's highly desertified. It rains maybe once every couple of years, and when it rains, it pours and floods. And there was a terrorist attack there that stopped the tourists from coming for a good 5 years or so. And what that meant was that the indigenous people that live in that area were relying on tourism income, and they didn't have enough food to feed themselves. And what he realized was that food security in that region was really, unstable and not present. So he started experimenting with how he could grow food. Bearing in mind, like I said, this is an area with very, very, very low rainfall and a lot of heat. And he still managed to find a way, completely self-taught, to create a small regenerative farm that is building soil and biomass and biodiversity, as well as feeding his community. And slowly over time, rather than going to his neighbours and preaching to them, they started coming to him, and he shared his knowledge, his seeds, his little plants. And now there are 100 families. Now there are 100 families that he's been working with. They've planted 6,000 trees. They've conducted 40 research projects, and they're teaching 450 children about ecosystem restoration and regenerative agriculture, and just generally how to live sustainably. Another ERC which is really inspiring when it comes to food security is called Contour Lines. And they started in 2019, so they're a very young organisation. They're based in Guatemala, and what they do is they support families and communities who have cut down some of the rainforest in order to grow food, to live a subsistence life. But the way that they've done that is by planting monocultures of corn, where they've used slash and burn agriculture. So they've cut down the forest, they've burnt off the stubble, and then they've used chemicals to grow the corn. And this has been a disaster for biodiversity, as well as for our climate and for their own health and access to food. And what Contour Lines has done is that it's come in and offered communities the chance to do it differently and plant agroforests on contour that are really diverse, by giving a community 50 trees and the knowledge of how to plant them and take care of them. And then if the family has done that successfully and followed all of the instructions and the trees are doing well, then they'll get another 50 trees, and then an exponential amount of trees every time, and the forest grows and the gaps in the rainforest fill, even though it's food producing, they're farms essentially, but they say that the Amazon is one big food forest, and this is a truly sustainable indigenous way of feeding ourselves that is really critical, that we go back to that way of growing food for a future that is not scary for us. They've had a really, really high success rate, and they've already planted 2.8 million trees, working with 398 communities across the country, and that's in 5 years. And the success rate of their projects, I think, comes down to the fact that they don't treat people like charity cases. It's not some Western NGO going in and taking pity on people. It's empowering them with work grants rather than charity, and giving them the chance, like in any other country, to access resources that they need to do something with, rather than there being any sort of pity or any sort of patronising-ness. And that's really worked for them, as well as they're doing things incrementally and only giving small numbers of trees until success has been shown, commitment's been shown, and it's spread really rapidly, and it's really, really inspiring. Another ERC which is doing really inspiring work when it comes to food security is called Doku, and they're based in Malaysia, in the Malaysian Borneo, which is a place, as we all know, that was once full of beautiful primary tropical forest and has been really, really degraded by specifically palm oil plantations. And a lot of these palm oil plantations are now really exhausted, because tropical forests, all of their biomass and their fertility is in the above ground vegetation. When you remove that, the soil exhausts itself really fast, and the land isn't fertile anymore. And so what Doku is doing is that it's giving jobs to local people. It's currently working with 2,000 hectares across Borneo, and they're using commercial bamboo to kickstart the soil, to put the soil microbes and the soil life back in, using the biomass of bamboo, and they're then selling that bamboo in an integrated value supply chain, where they're creating botanical extracts and larvae insect protein as animal feed. And it's a closed loop system for regenerating the industrial agriculture landscape that they've been left with. So that just gives you a quick whistle-stop tour of the ERC movement. I hope that you found this informative and inspiring, and without this movement, I don't know what I would do, really. I think I would just never get out of bed ever again. But because of this job and because of being involved in ecosystem restoration, I have motivation to keep getting up every day. Even if the news is scary, I still know that I'm contributing towards a better world and a survivable future for future generations, including myself, you know. And every day I'm seeing more and more people wanting to get involved, wanting to train with us, wanting to start their own projects. It's hard not to be hopeful when you work in ecosystem restoration, and hope is incredibly good for the soul and the mind. So if you want to find out more, you can go to our website. It's www.erc.earth. There are loads of ways that you can get involved. You can donate. Obviously, donations are really needed for this work. You can volunteer with us. We have something called the Restoration Project Finder, where you can type in where you want to go, which ERC you want to visit, what time of year, what skills you have, and then it matches you with an ERC that's looking for people like you. And we've matched hundreds of people to ERCs across the world since launching this platform only a few years ago. And you can train with us, like I've said. So we have all of these different training opportunities for you, to give you a career in this field, because we need millions of people who know what they're doing to step up and restore the earth with us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us on this beautiful segment with an incredible human being and contributor and thought leader in the movement of regeneration as a whole. He calls himself, and he's got many names, but we call him Daniel Christian Wahl. And he's in the island of Menorca. I think I pronounced that well. Daniel, you're welcome to this call. We really appreciate your taking time and jumping in on an almost short notice. But yeah, thank you very much for joining.
How could I not come when you invite me? I'm always delighted to talk to you, Precious. So thank you for inviting me.
No, truly, thank you. And hope that you've had a nice break. So I'm just going to indulge our audience a little bit on Daniel, who I'm sure is well known because he's really a global thought leader. But it's beautiful for those that are meeting him for the first time online today. Daniel is one of the thought leaders and a catalyst for Regeneration Rising. He's also an author of a very famous book that has been translated into about 7 languages. It's called Designing Regenerative Cultures. If you've never held that book, I encourage you to indulge yourself. He also works as a consultant, educator, and activist with NGOs, businesses, governments, and global change agents. So education-wise, he has degrees in biology, holistic science, and a PhD in design for human and planetary health. His work has influenced and really continues to influence emerging fields of regenerative design and salutogenic designs. He's a winner of a couple of awards, but here I'm going to mention the 2021 Bicentenary Medal for applying design in service to society, and a 2-year fellowship with the Volans Fellowship. I'm truly honored to have Daniel here today because he's not only a friend, a colleague, but he's also a mentor. Just when you listen to him and how he's been drifting in the thought process of regeneration and regenerative cultures. So Daniel, this is the People's Food Summit. We're talking all things food, all things solutions, and this is the European segment, but your voice goes beyond Europe as we live in a global village, essentially. I'm going to just invite you to share your thoughts on the importance of this particular topic, and I think we just take it from there.
Thank you, Precious, again for this opportunity. And I mean, what's written behind you probably says it all. We need to cool the planet and we need to feed the world. And increasingly, I find myself in situations where there is a choice to be had, whether to have a conversation about how to fix the current system, how to window dress a system that has been in place for so long that the side effects of it, we don't even understand because they've become culture. And that is the system of colonialism that is still running through. That is the system of power over nation states, competitiveness between blocks, between countries. And unfortunately, the collective actions of a proportion of humanity have resulted in changes in the Earth systems that we are now no longer in the driver's seat. We will meet changes that will be so profound that even the most profound terra firma, the ground we think we stand on as a culture, as a civilization, as a way of doing things, will be shaken. And unless we understand that, the conversations about what are we to do now will be fundamentally different. If we still think that rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic after hitting the iceberg has any sense whatsoever, and we continue playing that game, we can. But I believe that what this summit is about and what this movement is about is to say, okay, we're operating in this system on the Titanic, but we can begin to build strategies that are fundamentally about how does the link between healthy food and healthy ecosystems, healthy communities, healthy local economies, and healthy human beings actually come together. And food is central, and agriculture is central. That what culture and how it provides itself, like the depth of how do we create the regenerative cultures where we step back into our species inheritance, which is the pattern of being regenerative keystone species in the ecosystems that bring us forth. Now we're a global species, but we still live in locally and regionally bound territories. And the way to heal the global problems is not having another UN conference where 50,000 people descend on Egypt. It's about having a conversation of how people in place can increase their community resilience against unpredictable change that we know for certain will come and will not be easy, to provide these people with basic provisioning, food, water, shelter, a healthy environment, and to link all of this to creating healthy local economies again, healthy regional economies, diverse local entrepreneurship, different types of educations that fit the place and the culture and are fundamentally focused on healing the ecosystem and healing our communities and healing our relationship with this larger system that brought us forth, which is the planetary biosphere. And that's a massive job. And we're out of time. Like it's 1:25, and there are no guarantees of success anymore.
True. And, you know, Daniel, because that's obviously very thought-provoking. And your approach indeed provoked something in me to say, instead of saying, you know, this is the solution, or trying to drive the ship the other way around, we are already in a big mess. And that's a different thought process. We are in a mess, but there are immeasurable opportunities. So I'm kind of interested and keen to know, you know, with this big thought and honestly incredibly eye-opening thought process, what opportunities have you been seeing or been taking advantage of? And I think it would be nice for everyone who's listening, including myself, to see where we can all plug into this rearrangement of how we view our situation as a globe.
But I mean, the danger of somebody like me holding forth is that it's people could get the idea of me knowing how to do this. What I am is a student of life and living systems and how they work and how they create health and resilience over time. And as a designer, my big question was given to me by my mentor, David Orr, who said, like, how to fit a species arrogant enough to call itself Homo sapiens on a planet with a biosphere is a design problem. And that's basically where we're at. And my conclusion is that it only fits at the local and regional scale. So the opportunities are not in pleasing the globalist agenda and the globalist conversation and the temptation of ever more global networks and alliances that are all needed. But the action and the real relationship building is on the ground. It's even beyond the digital space. If we understand how profound the cascading collapses and breakdowns could be everywhere in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, on all the continents, we really need to think of how would we fall back onto patterns that are actually the ancient patterns that made us survive. And that is custodianship of the ecosystems in which we live. And there's so much in that space already to support all the good work that is going on right now everywhere in such a way that we have a double strategy. We still, while the system is pushing into international conversations, we have them, we take the opportunity for it, but we pay attention to the fact that what really matters is human relationship to each other and to the land within the context of a specific place and bioregion. And all the kind of strategic transformation processes where we're still trying to influence big players within systems that might not fully survive these cascading collapses might be a waste of time and strategy. If we I would say the changes are now coming so hard that we don't need to change the system. It will change itself, that it's already pre-programmed. But we can, as Nora Bateson puts it, ready ourselves in the context of the changes that are now no longer avoidable. And that's a very different attitude. And it's a different way to deploy money. It's a different scale at which to intervene. And that's the local and regional scale. We're ultimately talking about re-regionalization and relocalization of primarily food production, but in ways that don't destroy, but enhance the local ecosystem and local community ties. So much is about direct links between producers and consumers within the context of a region. And then the nuanced, what can't be produced in one region, like it's not a kind of protectionism and falling back to self-sufficiency at the community scale, but it is a going back to that as much as possible in order to then see how we need to arrange larger flows of trade to provide shortcomings in one area and another, because of course it's too simplistic to say it's all about localization. There are issues around food distributions that are larger, and it's this, how do we find that nuanced conversation when what we need is a radical relocalizing, but without dismissing the supportive subsidiary national and international necessities that will enable that radical relocalization.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a view. And I think just yesterday, I was talking actually to a colleague that the language also is very important in this very theme. Because for so long we focused on food security, but then I think if we are looking at relocalization and re-regionalization, the bigger idea is the cultural relevance of initiatives, regenerative initiatives or regenerative foods or agroecology. You're not only talking about people having enough to eat, but people having enough that has evolved with their cultures. And they are also in control of how it's produced, how it's shared amongst themselves. And again, not to oversimplify, but with the current weather events, as you have well put, it's becoming clearer and clearer that it will be very important for the movement locally and putting all the pieces and the nodes to a global voice to say, I think relocalization is becoming more apparent. We are actually sitting here with a situation where this is one of the toughest years we've had, with a super heavy El Nino effect that happened in the last growing season. And only those who grew traditional foods and mixed foods for resilience are the ones who have something to share, whether it's a legume, a pumpkin. But those who were flying towards maize, we are all learning, instead of saying, we told you, again, it goes back to the language. We are all learning that actually the maize industry may be failing us as a people, but it's not really time to pinpoint. I think it's time to show and display, as we also listen to the thought process. Where is it going? How does it apply to where I am? So I just wanted to really acknowledge that and receive it with great meekness. Yeah.
As you were just saying that, I was reminded of that famous quote of Buckminster Fuller, don't fight the existing system, create the alternative system that makes the existing system obsolete. I think we're now at a point where there's a slight change in that sentence, which is, don't fight the existing system. It will make itself, or it is making itself obsolete right now anyway. So build the alternative structures. So we're like, it's clear that that system cannot continue. And so the more we support people locally to find that sweet spot where they can rebuild community resilience and cohesion. They can, like, Willem Verweer framed it quite well with the 4 returns, because like you need that return of inspiration. What can this place be? And what is our role in being right custodians in this place? And then with the return of inspiration and the attention of ecological healing come ecological and social returns as people start talking to each other and engage together in healing their local ecosystem. And then shortly after, once you have that local and regional focus, you begin to create the economic abundance, and you begin to create the diversity of seeing, we need a local processing plant, all those kind of things that then create the local food cycle, so it actually can go to local, and building the connection between producers and consumers. Of course, it's different in every locality. That's the core of regeneration, is that it will be different in every locality because it has to come out of the place and its culture. And yeah, I think that vision that is also somewhat in the 1,000 landscape for 1 billion people model, to begin to think at the landscape scale and say, how do we heal this landscape by relocalizing food production, by thinking about agroforestry, like finding the right mix between where are trees appropriate, where's savanna appropriate, where's grazing appropriate, and how do they intermix, and all of that. So it's the long term, not just seeing things in silos. This is not just about food. It's not just about agriculture. As we know, it's about water, it's about climate, it's about the local economy, it's about community, it's about culture, story of place, connection of place, the flip back into, and again, this is like, depending on where people are listening, this sounds ridiculous, but it's, for some people, it's the flip back into a kin-centric worldview, to actually begin to understand that we are family with life and we depend on all life. For so many places that have been chasing the kind of insidious neo-colonialist model of neoliberal economic globalization, that kind of thinking that we are separate from nature and that we need to take agrochemicals to rule over her, that it's been insidiously planted in so many places that some people have come to believe it.
True, it's been planted everywhere, such that it's incredibly hard to undo this knowledge of that nature needs to be infused with things for her to produce and feed us back.
Yeah.
But also, I think it's really been brought forward by, honestly, our limitation as humans to think in silos. Because in this case, when you're putting in pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, or whatever that you're putting to the environment that eventually disadvantages you, in your heart of hearts, you have a goal. You are thinking towards a goal of a bumper harvest. But in essence, over and above money, what else is it costing you? What else is it costing the environment that you're managing? What else is it costing even your future? And how is it even messing up further the ship that's already in a shipwreck? But the education has gone on for so long, such that even in small family farmers that I get to work with, you do find that you have to start small. You have to start with a little demo site where we all can see and appreciate what is possible. But again, I think your conversation and your thought this afternoon, our time, has given me also a bit of comfort, because you said, to twist Buck Fuller's quote, we will not make it obsolete anymore. It will just vanish. So it's encouraging to farmers, to people like me who are working with small groups, small organizations, to just keep sure-footed, And I think slowly there are many systems in the world and support systems that are coming up. People who are willing to support these small initiatives that in the end become like small lighthouses in a big sea full of many lighthouses. I think we should depend on those rekindling strategies for us to continually move forward. So yeah, it's quite comforting and truly deep.
Yeah, it's both the possible lighthouses for change and transformation and the resilience networks that we need should we be surprised by changes that will be part of the process by which suddenly things that we now have so central, like global trades and tariffs and all those arrangements, might just not be so important anymore in a 2.5 degree climate change world. And that's where we're going, fast. And therefore, the whole building examples locally and inspiring people locally to keep believing in that process, that in their place, like if you cool the planet, feed the world, maybe it's also about heal your place and your bioregion. That's the missing piece, like to actually understand that the healing of local ecosystems, of local rivers, the rebuilding of local topsoils, all that needs to be a priority, because everything else will flow from that. That's where the abundance will come from. And investment needs to go into that long-term healing of the soils, and not feeding some kind of structure of external demands in a globalized market for a certain product. Like, it's not growing beans for Tesco anymore. It's providing bioregionally for the population in the bioregion.
Yes. So Daniel, you know, I think in my little mind, there's been a thing of concern. Maybe this is the time to talk about it. You know how in the movement, there's many initiatives. I call them initiatives or practices or frameworks. For example, you know, you have holistic management, permaculture, agroecology, the whole line, agroforestry. Again, how we implement them depends on the place, what's relevant, how will each ecosystem respond, both the natural and the human ecosystem, right? But then I find us, we are in a bit of a rut in the movement, because somehow everyone's being tempted to stand underneath their small umbrella. You know, this is the one that will take us out of the problems. This is the one that will take us. And we find ourselves really just exchanging and not being very fruitful. Yeah. So what's your thoughts, and what can be the messaging?
I hear you. I mean, it's the external pressures and temptations for certification, with maybe the positive quality control element in mind, like making sure things are done properly. But it is an abstraction process. The minute you go into certification, it's about ticking boxes and log frames, data, cold data, analyzing. It's not about the specific anymore. It's not about it didn't rain the last 2 weeks in this part of the village, but for some reason over there it briefly rained. I mean, that's when you go into the local grain here, where I do a little bit of research in regenerative agro-food forestry. We can have torrential rains 2 kilometers from here, where people for an hour and a half get lots of water, and it's bone dry here, and the other way around. And that is never captured in any system that tries to arrange standardized ways of working. And so I think at the same time, we need certification schemes in order to make the conversation move on in the conventional system. And there, if you hold them lightly as a bunch of questions you ask yourself, and then you reflect on them, and you discard them or you change them depending on what the local culture and place does, then it's a different story. But to make it easier on the admin system, it tends to be, again, that using science and data collection and digitalization and more data connection and more sensors, remote sensing and all of that, which might have its own usage. But we need to understand that all of these are abstraction processes unless we use some of the current satellite technology that is beginning to really work with specifics of place. So for me, the paying attention to supporting people locally to do it in, like, specific to their place, to bring the movement together in a way of saying, if it serves the local population to provide food in a way that heals the local ecosystem, great. But let's not get, like, the temptation right now is to get into biodiversity credits, carbon credits, and all of that. People will go there. There's a huge market there. And unfortunately, to do this well, there would need to be a localized scheme that includes local water. It needs to up-to-date climate patterns. It needs to look at how carbon is stored long-term and in what way. It needs to look at biodiversity in a changing climate and context. And all of that, I think that's part of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. It's a waste of time. We have more urgent things to do. We know what we need to do. Heal the soil, get plant cover on the ground, whether it's grasslands or trees, and use that process of healing the local ecosystem as a way of changing the local economy, building local social capital and relationships, and building the network, even if it's just that the community knows each other and its place again. If we achieve that in the next 10 years, that in every bioregion of the planet, people actually know, even if not all their food is met locally, but they know who their local producers are and what they are producing and why they are important, and they know their ecosystem again, we will stand better as humanity in the changes that the 2040s and 2050s are now likely to hit us with in a way that unfortunately won't be pretty.
Mm. And we can set all the heavy targets towards 2050, towards 2060. But as long as we don't heal on where our feet are actually standing in the moment, it truly is a waste of time. And as we were talking about the carbon credits and all the other credits that everyone's frantically trying to redesign, because there's lots of loopholes in the whole topic there. When you were talking, in my head, truly, I said, okay, once your landscape, your soil, your ecosystem, your natural ecosystem is healed, it will pay you. No one has to come from somewhere with money to pay you, because it also really complicates the whole thing. I think we need to understand that, yeah.
The deadlock, it can be something as simple as, like, I'm flying below the radar with a small research site of Mediterranean climate zone, island-based regenerative agro-food forestry, experimenting, completely discipline agnostic with things I learned from permaculture, regenerative agriculture, syntropic agriculture, and all of them somehow in a way that this place invites me and asks me to do, not putting it onto the place. But to do that kind of experimentation stuff, I best not talk to any official body and get registered as an experimental farm, because then I'm not allowed to do anything anymore. It's part of these regulations that we, in the best of intentions, try to create, also stop certain experimentation with new growing methods, much more dense growing, all of that. And I think it's important to keep flexibility in our farming systems, because everything is on the move now. The temperature changes from one altitude to another altitude in a place, as well as from one latitude to another latitude between places, is such that the pollinators and the pollinated don't match anymore, that the migrations don't fit anymore, which means the whole concept of preserving an ecosystem in its virgin original state, all these weird names that we give ecosystems, is an old concept. It's like a freeze frame. This is what this ecosystem looked like when we did the first census, but it's changing. Like the density and what kind of trees can grow in a place because of climate change is going to transform. So we need to be open to experimenting there as well. Yeah,
Open to experimenting, open to understanding that whole systems is about, I think, being part of a world where pieces keep moving. Nothing is stagnant, and things will change so fast. And I don't think that we are innately prepared to accept. I mean, we do it with our clothes, right? We change sizes all the time, but we don't seem to understand it when it comes to our natural our natural ecosystems. We don't go back to the tailor to check again, like, will this still fit? We just bring our old knowledge and keep wanting to grind in the same way. And of course, it becomes frustrating and it feels like nature is fighting against you, but things are keeping moving and things are keeping changing. I feel like we all have to embrace that truth, even when we're talking about seed and food systems, that you can't keep imposing plants anymore on people should plant this. I think nature will continue to communicate. Our role is to understand. Our role for those that have an opportunity to train and facilitate is to keep digging into eco-literacy. How are things looking now? How can we relate to this? What does it mean to the current way we are farming? How do you see it progressing going forward? That's really amazing. Daniel, I know that listening to you, reading your books, listening to your talks, and being a scientist, I'm sure you're the scientist who left the sheep of how normal scientists think. What inspired that journey of you in the design place? I remember you talking about your PhD, that it wasn't very attractive for many years. Like, what is that truth that you held on to be where you are now? I feel like it's an intrusive question to
thank you.
our face,
Interesting
but
question.
very interested in knowing.
And there's a lot of changes in the world of education at the moment. You might have heard the news that the relationship between Dartington Trust and Schumacher College has changed, and Schumacher College might be closed down. And I, as you mentioned at the beginning, I did my master's in holistic science at Schumacher College by now 23 years ago, in 2001. And there was confronted with a way of healing what previously had made me leave science because it felt wrong how we were approaching things. And I couldn't find a way in that system that was beyond that obsession with p-values and statistic or quantified data. And it didn't allow for the naturalist dynamic perspective of being a participant in nature. And right at Schumacher College, that's what I got back. Talking Gaia theory with James Lovelock, talking deep ecology with Stephen Harding, who recently died, talking complexity science and health with Professor Brian Goodwin, one of the founders of the Santa Fe Institute of Complexity and one of the leading lights of complexity science. And really understanding that at the core of science itself, there is a message that is, the world is not predictable and controllable beyond a very small time frame and localization. That means the best thing we can ever do is aim for appropriate participation, not for prediction, control, and manipulation. That's barking up the wrong tree. And because it's a dance and a continuous learning to be in the ecosystem, not to be the scientific white-coated observer that has nature out there. Like, nature isn't out there. We are nature. It's all one system. And our way of thinking just influences how we understand it. But if we come back into the system and we understand that the only way that we can qualitatively, not quantitatively, measure whether we succeed in appropriate participation, like being part of the system, is whether what we do increases the health of the system at all scales, the health of a cell, the health of an organ, of an individual, of a family, of a community, of a bioregion, an ecosystem, a planet. And if we can pay attention to organizing our affairs and doing things in such a way that we always aim to increase overall systems health, that's where life doesn't become a struggle for competition anymore, where it flips around and actually becomes a synergistic exercise where the more you give, the more you receive. And so for me, it clicked back then that the aim was, how do we heal the system? How do you create healthy wholes and appropriate participation in it? That was the long subtitle of my master's thesis. And then I got the opportunity to do a PhD, which I thought was going to be designed for sustainability, because I thought, okay, design is the way we can build that world. And in that process, I realized that no, it's designed for human and planetary health. How do we actually fit back in? It's a much more humble thing. It's not a how do we redesign the world? It's more a kind of how do we learn how to design our affairs in ways that we become once again vehicles of life's regenerative impulse flowing through us, because regeneration is not a concept. Regeneration is nothing new. Regeneration is the heart of what happens in every cell, in every ecosystem. It's life's process to create conditions conducive to life. And we need to align with that process again. And our species inheritance in every place around the planet where we still have indigenous roots and connection to the land is that we have shown that we're capable of being regenerative keystone species in that place. We have made places more biodiverse, more abundant, more productive over millennia when we lived in the right relationship with the land. But we've lost that right relationship. And that's what I think this summit is all about.
What an opportunity this has been to also have you summarize your beautiful life's journey in these very few minutes. I asked that question with a great knowledge that the essence of your work and the essence of regeneration, that's where it stems from. I mean, as the world is precious, and on behalf of Regeneration International, thank you for the amazing work that you continue to do and for all the lessons that you continue to so quietly share. You are one of the quietest human beings who's also a very powerful force. I mean, I don't know how you do that together, but truly, the world is not predictable. The world cannot be controlled, but we can only coexist and co-learn. Yeah, do you have remarks to the world, remarks as we close down?
The only remark might be to foreground again that it's a kind of strange world where we invite experts to have conversations about things and ask them questions, and then they have to answer them. And increasingly for me, I just want to say I'm talking from my privilege of education, of background, of nationality, of skin color, of knowledge, of even inheritance, so I can be on the land that I'm now the custodian of. There's so much that there are people listening who have a very, very different life than me, and their opinion and their ability to connect to their place, connect to each other, and connect to the healing of their land, and thereby the healing of their and their children's future is their way of doing it. And I'm not the expert to tell them what to do. Contrary, I'm a overeducated academic who's got the privilege of now learning something really basic that for them has been the way they survived for most of their life. So part of you inviting me here made me feel a little bit like, who am I to even talk here? But thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
Thank you. And part of me inviting you here as an African girl, rural girl, was the confidence that I know that you speak the language of the earth, you speak the language of the ecosystems, and that language is universal. Based on what you've learned from your place and what I've learned to be true in my place, hoping that whoever is hearing us also can resonate with those truths and they can translate to whatever they can use, or they can just hold their heart with understanding or no understanding. We cannot really control how everything will go for everyone who hears, but the language of nature is one. And I think you care deeply, we also care deeply. And this is a language of love. Thank you, Daniel. Truly, truly. Thank you so much. So till next time, and
okay.
appreciate your contribution. Hi Sheila, hi Simon, and hi world. Welcome to the People's Food Summit segment, and I'm currently having the honor to record the European continent. I'm here with two wonderful colleagues that agreed to jump on a call with us, Sheila Darmos, who is based in Greece, and Sheila is a farmer as well as a member of the European Regenerative Agriculture Alliance. Sheila, you're welcome, and I hope that you're having a good day. And we also have Simon Kraemer, who is currently in Sicily, but is also coming in here from the policy space of the European Regenerative Ag Alliance. Simon literally agreed to jump on this call last minute, so we're truly also blessed to have you. And so, well, this is the People's Food Summit. We're thankful that because of the online space, we live in a world without borders. We're no longer limited, and we can chat an African and two Europeans about a thing that we are both interested in, which is regenerative agriculture, a secure future, and social cohesion in whatever space that we come from. So guys, feel free. Sheila, can you please engage us? Tell us about yourself and your role in the farming communities there in Greece. And yeah.
Yes, thanks a lot also for the invitation, Precious. As you already said, I'm a farmer in South Greece, and I'm very honored to continue the farm of my father, which was one of the first organic farms in Greece back in the 80s. And now it's in agroforestry since 2015. And also I'm running a very small food business. So we work with a lot of organic farmers from the region and with a lot of small food enterprises all over Europe. Also, I'm running regenerative farming in Greece, and our aim is there to really support farmers in the transition and make regenerative farming more known. So we connect farmers in peer-to-peer learning networks. We provide a lot of educational content in Greek language, because language in Greece is a barrier for farmers to learn. And we're also hopefully soon going to have more capacities to work in the policy space. And I'm also very, very lucky co-founding farmer of EARA, of the European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture. But I think we're going to get to those details a bit later. Maybe Simon can have some space to introduce himself.
Yes, please, Simon, go ahead. Thank you, Sheila.
Yes, thank you, Precious, for inviting us, and hello to all the wonderful people on the People's Summit on food. I'm Simon. I grew up in Germany in the medium-sized food industry, let's say, and have been studying economics and political agroeconomy and ecology, and have been working also for nature conservancy NGOs, as well as in the private sector, kind of consulting for small and regenerative and short food value cycles. And I had the great honor of co-facilitating the self-organization of the amazing pioneers of regenerative agriculture in Europe, really from the whole diversity of production types, of agroecosystems, also of farming philosophies, into our now European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture that is completely farmer-led in a sociocratic manner, and with which we hope to influence both policy making as well as kind of private sector sense making of our crisis and their adaptation within it, as well as, of course, almost most importantly, the health of the amazing farmers within and their families.
Thank you. Thank you both. Maybe just a quick question. I'm quite interested to learn what drew you to regenerative agriculture. I will speak for myself. I grew up rural, growing up with my grandmother, and interacting with the land. So I naturally sort of took that route, and I found myself very keen and interested. Like, what drew you? I know, Sheila, you overtook your father's farm, but it must have taken something extra within you to jump in.
Yes, that's true. I think also for me it was quite natural. I was like born and raised with this attention towards nature and to care for it. And I think then my background in sociology also made me always think about how can we create a context for people to bring out the best in them, like to bring out the best in, behavior in people. So always to looking at it from a systemic point of view. Also having grown up in Germany 20 years and returning back to Greece, I was like, wow, things here are very different. And so I was always analyzing like what is happening, why are the dynamics here so different, why is environmental awareness here so much less. And yeah, I think all this led me on my path to this where I am now.
Awesome, that's fantastic. And Simon, from a very different level, but you also found yourself in the regenerative ag space.
Yeah, so I grew up really on the dinner table discussing always the power of the big retailers and how farmers, but also small and medium-sized processing and food industry can survive. So I really came from this socioeconomic perspective. And then I must say, firstly, got into contact with Walter Jean, the amazing Australian microbiologist and regenerating practitioner, and the whole livestock debate and what is driven then again of the same power structures that I grew up on fighting on the dinner table. And then again in the big NGOs, especially in Germany, Regen Ag was looked upon not as a revolutionary farmer movement from below that had the capacity of uniting in diversity all the different progressive farmers, but just as a greenwashing vehicle of big business. And then we really came to understand that we need to bring in this space, especially in Europe, a voice that is led and manifested by the leading practitioners, the farmers.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I can't believe that we both know Walter Jean. I know him very well, and I think we've shared quite amazing platforms, and he's amazing. Like, he's amazing to listen to. What a small world. Yeah, so I think at first I heard both of you talking about the transitioning of farmers from the everyday, normal, industrious agricultural practices towards regenerative agriculture. What's the state of things now? You can speak for the region or speak for your country. Doesn't really matter, but what's the state of things? How is that support coming in, and what structures are being put into place? And I suppose we're slowly rolling towards the formation of the alliance, but just a bit of a comment.
Yeah, maybe I start again. Yeah, so Greece is very much behind, I would say, in supporting farmers in any kind of ecological practices, unfortunately. Even though farmers in Greece manage 45.5% of the Greek land surface without having any kind of support whatsoever in learning more about soil, about how it relates to plants, about biodiversity, like no chance. I experienced it myself before I started this work. I went to an agronomist and the only advice I got was, oh, use these 8 chemicals. I'm like, wait, I'm organic. I said, oh, don't worry, nobody will find out. I'm like, wait, I don't want to. Can anybody tell me what to do that is like in harmony with nature? And yeah, so that's the state quite still in Greece. I mean, I think we did a bit of work to support farmers in the transition, but it's a big task. I mean, in Greece, 10% of the population are involved in the farming activities, actually, which is quite a lot, I think, in a European comparison. But I know from countries like France that there is actually a lot of support. Farmers can even visit trainings about regenerative agriculture for free. They get funding support for specific practices. And so there's a big difference within all the countries, and also fortunately through EARA, so through the European Alliance, we can now see much easier and much quicker all these differences, and if the countries have caught up already with what the European Union, for example, is proposing. So it's really quite interesting to see all these differences.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And I imagine, obviously, the throughout the region, different countries, the uptake is quite different. And I feel like knowing what your neighbor does and the beauty of social media these days, those stories become inspiring and everyone's sort of catching on, which is how I imagine the alliance then became. Any thoughts from you, Simon, on the transitioning for farmers?
Yeah, I would just add again, I think so far throughout Europe, this transitioning of farmers is driven by pioneering farmers like Sheila in Greece, but also, let's say, heroes like Sarah Singlar, Frédéric Thomas in France, in Germany, Alexander Klümper in the UK, like Ben Taylor Davis, and of course all the livestock evolution of the savory hubs. So I think we have a lot of catching up to do in the public policy sector, because also here in Europe we are very path dependent, and we have a lot of rules and a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of vested interests. So one example is only Germany, where we are, for example, although we have all possibilities, we are very much behind, even if you look at very simple indicators like the application or the use of direct seeding and cover crops in intensive arable farming, or of holistic management and diverse pastures in grassland management. And that is vested on, for example, we have a big machinery producing, tractor machinery producing interest space in Germany, who of course have little interest in the tractors being used less, so that the farmers have to buy less powerful tractors and they don't break down so soon, so they have to buy less tractors over time, just as a little example.
That's amazing. Okay, so I'm quite intrigued as well, because you did mention holistic management and transitioning in that space. Here, I'm working with communal family farmers to practice holistic management. And we're using the bigger framework of regenerative agriculture, but I'm actually an educator in holistic management. So this is all home for me as well. It's amazing, all these connections that we keep finding. And I believe that the story is the same across the board. Literally, you find that big agriculture has made a mindset to farmers. I wouldn't say it's the farmers who are like that. It's a mindset that another way of farming is a joke. Like what Sheila said, that someone says, no one will find out. It's not about them finding out. It's about what I'm willing to create on my farm. And so I think that mindset, I guess all of us who are in regenerative agriculture are digging through these layers of this embedment of mindset that has gone for a long time amongst farmers, such that a sort of fear has been instilled on farmers to transition, or fear of what if I lose? That's where we wish we had more support to cushion them as they learn and revamp their soils back to life. But this is quite a beautiful dialogue. And I suppose at this point, we can then jump in and say, what inspired the formation of the Alliance? And just go shopping with the whole thing about what do you guys see as the bigger dream? What sort of structures are in there? You can start, Simon, or Sheila, whoever is free to start.
Yeah, I think I can start, and then of course I would say Sheila can contribute why she came and wanted to become a founding farmer. I think first of all is the peace among the pioneering farmers. You must understand that at the European policy level, some political constituencies of progressive farmer movements like conservation agriculture or organic or agroecology actually are fighting against each other instead of working together. While the farmers on the ground all work together for their soil, for their community, for their family. That's one point. Then the other point is really, as you said, it's a mindset. And I think, and we all believe that this mindset of farmers is very interdependent with the general mindset we have in society. So in Germany, or in Europe, sorry, is of course very much high yield intensity driven. So why do farmers say any other way is a joke? Because they might not get in a year with perfect circumstances the same super high yield. And we achieve that yield in that mind through segregation, to putting one plant without any connection to anything else in a vacuum to power it up on steroids as much as possible. And that's, of course, the same we're doing with our economies in general. I mean, we aim for GDP, which is just high yield without any value, and we power it up at all costs. And there we come in also, I think, from this regenerative mindset among regenerative farmers, we can grow a larger vision for the political economic development of our societies, as well as a reconnection with nature. And that's really where we're trying to advance the political discourse, but also the scientific discourse and epistemologies through putting our focus and our learning from these milieus that regenerative farmers create in their farms, in their agroecosystems, and so forth.
That's pretty incredible. And I drew from your speaking that you were inspired by a need to create connections. And I like the word peace, because I think I've faced a lot of my own mental questioning. Do I fit in with the permaculture group? Do I fit in with the agroecology group? Yet we are all really focused on the same thing, because I think half the time the language is disturbing. Oh, regenerative agriculture will not be working in what we think agroecology, or we think permaculture, or we think holistic management. Yet the power of all of us coming together is really often overlooked. So that's really quite inspiring. And I also harvested that you're bringing those connections between policy, practice, frameworks, community, and all being connected together by nature. So what an inspiring vision as well as really motivation. Sheila, do you have, from you, as a farmer, as a pioneering farmer, why did you want to be part of this movement?
Yeah, so I was really quite intrigued by the idea to come together with other pioneer farmers from all over Europe. But also, especially, I found it very, very relevant and also needed to have policy support. This is something that we're really lacking in Greece. And also, I think the access for farmers and even NGOs, like especially grassroots NGOs, to the policy space, I think is really, really difficult. You really need to get used to the mindset, and even daring to speak to these politicians and going to the ministry and all this. It's not really something that farmers will be like, yeah, let's go and let's voice our concerns. It seemed really like a gift from universe to have suddenly this invitation to co-found EARA and to have such an amazing team there that has experience in the space, but also that has totally the right mindset, and that are people that you would be friends with, and we became friends, of course. For me, that was the biggest drive to go there, but also then to have support in policy work in our country. So to kind of create a channel between European farmers back to their countries, and a two-way channel, so to say. That was my biggest drive to do this.
And can you guys speak a little bit to the main goal or the bigger goals that you can pick out? I mean, no worries if you mention everything or not, but like, what's the those goals that really speak to you immediately? And how are you guys structured as well?
Yeah, so maybe I start. Yeah, so some of our goals are really to learn from each other, to learn about the different practices in different contexts. Some of the farming contexts in Greece are really very similar to Italy, or to even the south of France, to Portugal, to Spain. So it's really interesting to learn from each other. It's really even interesting on the policy level to learn how is the government supporting farmers in all of those regions, and what are some good ideas that we can draw from that. But also, I think something very important is actually the community that gets created. It can be very lonely to be a regenerative farmer, especially in Greece. So yeah, I find it very, very nourishing to have this community of like-minded farmers, of pioneers all over Europe who really work and advocate for regenerative farming in their country. And yeah, it's a really important community as well. And yeah, maybe Simon, you can speak about the other goals that you're more related to.
Yeah, I was wondering if Simon can give us more the political goals and how you are hoping to tap into the policy. I'm quite intrigued, because there are so many people with different heads in the organization that you guys have created, and that helps farmers. You know, farmers, being a farmer myself and a rural person, you're mostly timid for these high offices, but then having a person who's used to the structures in there is quite empowering. So Simon, yes, you can speak to your political goals and policy and how all that is structured.
Gladly. Maybe allow me also to pick on, you said it's for us all between the relationships. And yes, I think it's exactly from this developing competitive into cooperative relationships. And maybe one last word on our internal functioning, which we develop mainly thanks to one of our great colleagues, Ana Digon, who has built a Spanish association for regenerative agriculture already for quite some years, and has a lot of experience in enabling the EARA founding farmers to function in a sociocratic, direct, democratically way, which nevertheless is super paradigmatic. And I think that's super important for all of us as society, of our reorganization from below. And then, of course, we would love to bring that to the policy space, but I think that's a much longer vision. Right now, we are in the beginning, we have been focused mainly on the common agricultural policy. And to give you an idea of what we are aiming at is, of course, to break down this mindset of believing that, especially in Europe, if we reduce inputs, we necessarily reduce outputs. And we need to do that to come to grips with the trade-off between productivity and nature, which is, of course, a completely eco-efficient Jevons paradox problematic mindset. So we set out to prove by not looking at, let's say, older science, ceteris paribus science, but really at the already achieved productivity and agroecosystem performance of the pioneering farmers from all diversity, that they can achieve what policymakers and politicians and even scientists in Europe still believe not even possible. That's one of our core aims. And then the other aim, after having produced this, let's say, empirics on regenerative agriculture, which we are still lacking in a holistic way, is the holy grail of how to create an enabling milieu for all farmers to engage on the regeneration path and advance on that path as fast as possible. And there, maybe let me say, globally, we spend $817 billion annually in public payments as support or subsidies to farmers. All of the 817 billion are basically a way to pay for nature exploitative and degrading farming. feeding basically only a 30 billion global healthcare system. And we really want to develop a path, again, learning from what regenerative farmers themselves have developed. So like the EOV of holistic management, like Regenified of pioneering American farmers, like Integrity Grown of John Kempf, like the Earthworm Foundation in Europe, where we can unite monitoring, reporting and verification, let's say this information producing, with the agronomic support that farmers need, that Sheila said in the beginning she was not giving, and we are still very lacking in a context-specific way. And really to fuse these both to create a new channel through which public money, our taxpayer money, can properly inoculate the regeneration path of all farmers.
That's an amazing and super broad context. When you, well, so you guys started in 2020, is that right? The era?
Well, we founded only in 2023.
2023, yes, okay. So maybe the seed started earlier than that. But how much is it growing? And what sort of funding opportunities are there for the Alliance, such that maybe you can be a big pool for helping support farmers who are transitioning or support farmers who are trying to deepen their knowledge and bring in all that you've been mentioning, the EOVs and all that for everyone to be verifiable, so to speak. I suppose you're also generating your own ways and your own standards as you are moving. What sort of support are you finding? And, you know?
Yeah, maybe I can say, to stay within holistic management and our lifestyle revolution and all growth, really, I hope we are on an S-curve. So, you know, and we are still before this exponential explosion of our growth. And so far, we have been really careful in stewarding for quality over quantity, so that we are really assured that when this exploitative, I'm already saying, this exponential growth is happening, we have cooperative and not exploitative relationships among our core parts.
That's amazing.
So we are not a cancer or a parasite, but a regeneration organism.
That's refreshing also hearing from you, because half the time we're obsessed about this many numbers are involved and, you know, we have jumped this, but usually in regenerative designing, sometimes it feels like and it's not even a stagnant truth, but I have seen a pattern to say it sort of feels like you have to deepen the design and understand the dynamics of this new being that you have created before you start seeing that growth. And maybe this is probably that time where you guys are, given that you only started last year, but like how many member states, if we were to use that word, how many member countries did you start off with? Everyone who jumped on board, and I see a growth anyways, eventually.
Yeah, so we started, I think, with 60 farmers, 15 to 20 countries. And we have now started our new member process, which is only by our founding farmers putting the word out to other regeneration pioneers. And so, yes, I think we are setting up the structures to then be growing more quickly and to the other countries of Europe, which is already happening. For example, I have, just yesterday I had a great call with an amazing pioneering young farmers building a movement in Romania. And I think he will become a farmer very soon. And maybe the last point, of course, you said on finances and stuff, that is, of course, a struggle for us, especially if we do not want to cater to the number game of philanthropy and, let's say, the fast quantitative impact analysis, which brings us just back to CO2 efficiency and these problems of that. We have been very lucky in that we had some small family foundations believing in the way we are doing things. And now I think as we come out of this beginning of the S-curve of our growth in the next 1.5 years, we will diversify a little bit and also see how we can engage with these private methodologies and the private sector, because of course 817 billion sound a lot, but the whole food system is 10 trillion. So it's not so much in the sense, like we need to be able to create positive ways of private capital to flow before we recommend what we need to recommend.
Thank you. I mean, as we almost draw to a close, can you guys speak a little bit to how do you see yourselves or the era playing, what role can they be playing on social cohesion? Are the social dynamics that you're going to be touching as you work with farmers or policymakers or consumers? How's that strategy?
Maybe we start with Sheila from her work for social cohesion in a Greek context.
And you know, I'm asking this question because, you know, the regenerative movement, it's not only like a practice, but it's also a social movement, science, policy, bringing in consumers, all that, economics, you know. So I'm just interested in seeing what sort of dimensions you guys are sensing.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think EARA will play quite a lot this role of also bringing together the different movements in the different countries because of this regenerative mindset that we have, and really going away from the competitive mindset. So this is a role I see many founding farmers starting to play in their own countries. And also I think it has to do with a generational change as well. So this is one big thing, really making everybody understand that we are going together in one direction. Is it called conservation agriculture, permaculture, natural farming, agroecology? So it has a lot this uniting character. Yeah, this I see as one of the main future developments.
Simon, you can jump in if you have something to say as well.
I just say we really like the metaphor of the social mycelium. You know, if you look at farmers across the board self-identifying with regenerative agriculture and really pushing the frontiers of agronomic innovation through increasing more cooperative relationships within soils and ecosystems, that's the same we ought to do in society. So we are alienated from each other, and ever more so, just like the plants and the soil in conventional agricultural fields. So I think, you know, there's also a lot of criticism sometimes of agricultural exceptionalism in policy discourse and political economy. I think that's very ill-informed, because it's agricultural that our cultural revolution must happen from below, and the farmers are the first stewards of our society's metabolism with nature, and from there grows our relationships with each other.
That's such
I could not have said it better.
Oh, that's so beautifully said, Simon and Sheila. Honestly, you guys, this has been also very enlightening to me, and I feel like it'll be so enlightening to everyone who listens to you. And, you know, as a wrap-up question, support question, how can other networks that have been around, like Regeneration International, we're global, and how can we support also just bringing in the mycelium that you just spoke about? How can we be part of you to promote, to support, to bring your voice out there? And yeah.
I mean, I can only say you were there to support us from the very beginning. You know, I was at the last World Climate Conference in Dubai and met the Friends of Regeneration International, and boom, boom, in terms of 20 minutes, they got me on a few stages where I could share the voice of our farmers and the general, revolution we all stand up for. And I think in general, we are immersing with each other. We hope also to put the question back to you. How can we support you and the global movement?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like telling each other's story wherever an opportunity arises, or our social media presence as well. It really helps. If there's stories or you guys have gatherings, we are that ally and that partner that can easily push things forward. And I'm sure you guys could do the same for us, because your story is so beautiful, and it looks like a beginning of something that will just continue to snowball, led by farmers, people with heart and passion and feet on the ground in their countries. It's quite inspiring. Sheila, do you have any last words?
Yes, I would maybe also like to add that also going more with this thinking of uniting and not being competitive. I do believe there is a legitimacy for having different movements, for having the natural farming movement. I mean, they all have their social background and how they were born. So I think the idea is not to erase all of them and just have one out there, but really to keep the diversity. And I think in that sense, really every movement needs to also have maybe appointed people who will create the connections with other movements and other organizations to actually see how can we actually on a very practical level help each other. This needs conversation. This needs people really having this collaborative environment in mind. And yeah, it takes time, it takes effort. We need to communicate. So, and I see many organizations just practically not having time to have those conversations even, while in the end we might do double work. And it would be more smart to work together from the beginning. Yeah, that's maybe my call out there.
Yes, thank you guys. I truly appreciate your time, and I hope you also enjoyed as much as I did. Seems very extractive, but I really gained a lot of insight from what drives you. And I guess that also brings in personal growth to me and the legal work that we are also trying to generate across the world. So it's truly inspiring, and I hope that we can continue to interact and collaborate as we move forward. Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much. And also we want to say we really appreciate the work that you guys are doing in Greece and all over the world. We really look up to you. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Hi again. Welcome to the People's Food Summit 2024 segment. I'm very privileged to host the European segment this year. I'm here with a person that I met online a few days ago, but we are now talking so much as if we've known each other for a long time, by the name Josefine, who is with the Academy Schloss Kirchberg in Germany. Hi, Josefine.
Hi, Precious.
Yeah, so you're welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I would love to share a little bit about Josefine. She was born at the foothills of the Alps in South Germany, and she completed her studies in design and product management in Salzburg, Austria. So that's where she focused on the EU's circular economy transformation plan. I'm quite excited that you are here because you have all this amazing experience, Josefine. You've also been an active designer in the intersections of transformation studies, landscape management, and architecture. always emphasizing on the systematic approaches that honor the dynamics of living systems and their unmeasurable vitalism, as well as their deep drive towards beauty. I welcome you today because you are also a big contributor to the European regenerative agriculture movement through the ERR. And I know that your academy also is a big place of gathering people and everyone from all walks of your guys' region. Please feel free to share and share abundantly as your heart leads.
Thank you, Precious. That was a very warm welcome, and I'm so honored to speak today to you and also to speak to the visitors and watchers of the People Food System Summit that you are bringing together, which is amazing. I do really think that the work that you're doing is brilliant. So well done. And you completely summarized perfectly. I've been with the Academy Schloss Kirchberg for the last 3 years. After I've had a sort of non-linear way into working within agrarian communities and our agri-food system today. Very quickly sharing, I come from the design space and the transformation design space, which is quite young and has been sort of developed over the last 15 years, but is a beautiful space where creative people look at societal problems or trajectories for the future in terms of how they develop towards a more eco-social approach, really understanding our activities within the more than human world and our world together. And that has led me to the studies that I did. And then I lived in New Zealand for a while, studying and working as well, and working especially at the intersections of land management, landscape architecture, and we had a lot of amazing encounters with and work and projects with Mana Whenua there that, as some of you might know, have their own design principles. So from stemming from the long history of Maori tikanga and culture, and that has been a very big shift for me in terms of understanding how, first of all, yes, we relate to natural environments around us, how we are totally embedded within it, how we are part of them, and how every design move that we do since the beginning of sort of crafting tools has been really, important steps on the way to how we form culture, how we form our communities, how we form our hierarchies and structures. And so we are all designers, but especially within this design realms, you have so many amazing tools and principles and pathways that have been shaped that really look into potential transformational processes that we can all collectively do together or shape together. And long story short, the design path led me towards issues of sustainability. Back then, sustainability was a big term. Not so much anymore. I think we're moving towards regeneration or even beyond, and those understandings of really how do we engage and how do we design the environments that we live in ultimately led to, there is always sort of a link to agriculture in our food system as the ultimate gateway into our interdependence with our natural environments. And from that shift in perspective, I returned back to Europe and I started working more closely within the food system space. And for the last years here at the Academy Schloss Kirchberg, after my master's studies then in Germany. And here we have a free research institute that is completely funded by either foundations or different sources of private funding. And we have been jokingly saying over the last year, it's sort of an economical place of everyone is invited to come here and to discuss and to join, and there is no boundaries or a very set sort of frame that we work within, and that makes it a very powerful and transformational place here. Maybe shall I quickly dive into the history of the Academy to give you an overview of how we got here?
Yes, just to also appreciate your introduction and the power of how every one of us is a designer. So how the farm is a design, how you live with your neighbors, how you build, how you the whole life is centered on design. And it was quite intriguing to just listen to you, just pull those pieces together. Yes, we're very excited to hear more about the Academy and the fact that it's really been channeling its energy towards availing opportunities to everyone. Yes, dig deep with the history, what you do, and if I have questions in between, I can ask to interject a little bit, but please feel free.
Perfect. So I think this history is quite interesting. So I'm really happy to share it. The Academy is or was founded under the roof of a foundation called Haus der Bauern, which translates to English House of Farmers. And that foundation, again, is the social welfare and socio-political foundation of our local farmers association that we have here, the Schwäbisch-Hällische Bäuerliche Erzeugergemeinschaft, a very long German word. But it is a local farmers association that works with around 1,500 farmers in the region who have basically built their own little cosmos here, working together, selling together the produce that they produce, may it be animal produce or grains, beans, and so on. There's a multitude of products. And the founder of that association, Rudolf Bühler, back in 2012, founded the Foundation House of Farmers to further propel farmers' rights locally here, but then also internationally. And the foundation is very much committed to freedom, cultural self-determination, social justice for the farming and the rural population here in the region, in Europe and internationally. And from that foundation came in 2015 and the first workings on the Charter for Peasants' Rights that was then declared into a fully accepted charter in early 2018 by the United Nations, and it's called Global Peasants' Rights Charter. And the convenience of I think it was around 450 groups from around the world came together here 2017 to fully understand what kind of trajectories there are within rural and farming communities around the world towards freedom, peace, and having their rights really heard, especially smallholders and small acre farmers. And the declaration that was then accepted by the UN in New York was a huge success, and that success led into further understanding, okay, we can really be a place of education and transformation from within this farmers association here. And the Farmers Association got later granted consultative status within the ECOSOC Council, so the Economic and Social Council with the UN Secretariat in New York, and therefore has rights to the UN in Geneva, New York, and Vienna, which is for a NGO or association that works on farmers' rights, quite a beautiful thing to engage within the wider global community on economic and social issues. worldwide. And from there on, the foundation in 2015 acquired this beautiful castle that we are in. The story by Rudolf Bühler goes from the feudals to the farmers, so shifting hierarchies and power structures there as well. And this is where we are now situated. The Academy was founded in 2017 as the educational hub of the foundation, and we are an incredible small team. We're only 4 people here, and over the last nearly now, 7 years I've been on board. For the last 3 years we've built a whole educational program that is including all different farming systems that works towards the regeneration of our ecosystem and then work towards life and the building of life. So might it be organic, regenerative, agroecological, conservation, agriculture, and so on. They have different terms, but at the end of the day, they all unite under the common vision of really having healthy agriculture and food systems. Yeah, and my role within it, maybe to quickly share that as well, is to facilitate and conduct and curate the educational programs that lead from field days with farmers to soil health courses, very in-depth, to big conferences that act globally, like the World Organic Forum that we've just had in 2024, and Regeneration International was a big part of that. And André Loy was here sharing the incredible work that you've been doing with us. And we are connected to the European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture, as you talked to Simon and the incredible Sheila, one of the founding farmers, because we've been over the last 3 years really actively sort of co-holding space for the emergence of the regenerative agriculture movement. Back in 2021, we brought the regenerative farming pioneers together with climate farmers here for the first climate farming congress that was still within COVID times. It was quite hard to bring European farmers together from all directions, but we succeeded. And through the years, we had 2 of those conferences, and at the second one, it was decided that it really needed a body on the European level by European farmers that totally self-determined can share their voices and their beliefs on the European stage. And yeah, the European Alliance was then founded here in the castle from us all together and by an incredible 50 founding farmers. And that midwifing process has been very beautiful to watch, because we're seeing the incredible voices now really highlighted within the political discourse as well as the social discourse on the European stage.
That's really incredible, and what a rich history. I like from the feudals to the farmers. What a complete turnaround on the usage of the castle. So maybe my question is, so in the education programs, are you guys the ones who educate, or you're in partnership with the farmer groups and different educators? You know, how does in this academy create a community of knowledge building, a community? Already I can sense that it's a community of bringing everyone together, because we are all interested in regeneration, whether you're into permaculture, agroecology, and whatever, breaking those down. But how do you then bring the community together?
Yeah, so we do our own teaching programs, yes, but then it's a big place of convenience, so that we're working with local universities here, we're working with international organizations and NGOs, and for us the main objective is that we bring those people together, just as you say, host gatherings, provide spaces, provide platforms, and then have pioneers as well as the incredible farming community working on all of our shared topics come and sort of build upon the platform that we are providing. And we had never had a real vision that was only like the very set. What we do is really focus on freedom and self-determination for farmers. So if we conduct programs and educational programs, we get together lecturers as well as teachers and from the wider farming community and conduct programs. And then also we do our own research in collaboration again with the organic universities in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, looking at different climate change mitigation models within different farming systems, as well as more holistic approaches to bringing agroecological, organic, and regenerative models to farming communities here, and the association, as well as research programs that we have in Ghana, for example, in India, and we are sort of the coordinating hub for that here.
So as a person who's into design, I guess my question is, how important is this model of the academy? You know, because usually someone says academy, you see a big pool of a self-contained institution, but it looks like it's almost like mycelium. It just taps into all the living systems around it. Tap into farmer groups, into educational institutions and all that. Like, how important is this kind of model for designing? And I mean, go as broad as you can, because really in the end, it can influence the whole region. But then the way that you guys designed it, I feel like it's in such a way that it can spread and tap its roots to every stream of work around you guys.
Yeah, that was beautifully phrased, the mycelium part. I love that. I think, honestly, personally, from very subjectively for me, places like this, the Academy, are incredibly important to foster on-farm research, as well as sort of inner development for farming communities, to having a free space where there's no agenda that comes from either only the political space or only the science place or only might it be the economically forced models that we have at the moment acting. Yes, it is a place of the different thought streams and school of thoughts coming together and understanding where are the approaches that best serve healthy farmers, healthy communities, healthy ecosystems, but then also providing a space where we don't have a doctrine, or we don't come with an ideology of set identities that we're seeing a lot in farming. So very dual, very binary, the good and the bad. I've been calling it the beauty and the beast agriculture. You know, it's sort of black and white. It can only be the best thing we can ever have and the worst that is bringing us climate change and that bringing us all these horrible emissions. No, it's either or, you know, it's not any of that. It is this very muddy space in between where we have incredible solutions that most of the time, I have to say, are developed over the last decades already on the farms, or within farming communities, and that don't find their way into scientific programs yet, because the scientific models that we use to measure things and so on are quite reductionistic in that. So We have been forcing that approach a lot to understand where can we break down those identities, where can we break down those boundaries, and where can we, I'm not saying skip science, not at all. It's just how do we propel each other forward to a point where we understand where do our real levers lie for ecosystem health and people health, and how do we bring transdisciplinary all the actors together that need to be sitting at the table, and obviously that needs to be the farmers themselves in the middle of that table. Yeah.
No, that's incredible. And I mean, respectfully speaking, you're right. No one is discarding science, because the whole thing that we're doing is also science. Farmers are scientists, except this time around, we are all really yearning and longing for a design that really counts into place the complexity of what we're dealing with. It's much more complex than complicated. There's lots of moving pieces together. So it is definitely important. And I think harvesting from just what you've shared as a story, I can see that this will then promote thriving spaces, whether for farmers, for research, policy. How are you reaching out to like maybe a group like consumers to also bring them in? It might be people who are not yet actively in the movement, but like, what are those efforts of bringing out your voice and the communication from the academy?
Yeah, that's the consumer side is an interesting one, because yes, first of all, we all eat food, and second of all, we sort of are all entangled with that world automatically as soon as we get up in the morning. What we have been a very concrete example with the academy, what we've been building up the last 5 years are the organic marketing days, where we bring together the German, and then sometimes it goes into Denmark, Netherlands, Austria, and Switzerland, organic associations, as well as small to medium and large producers that has also supermarkets, discounters, as well as local shops in them. So everyone along the value chain from field to fork, really. And we come together and discuss how do we best communicate the organic movement every November. And that is quite a pillar stone next to the BioFach, which is the biggest organic congress in the world, that is taking place in Germany every February. And those organic marketing days are an interesting example for communicating, yes, to the consumer, but then also communicating the values that we hold within the different sustainable agriculture and farming, as well as production models, so that we truly understand where those values lie, first of all, yes, and which kind of systems are making sense economically and socially, and then for us, or within the academy, it's really a matter of bringing together those stakeholders, understanding where the different communication marketing strategies lie, understanding how to propel each other so that we bring out a force onto the German stage to move closer together within the organic world, specifically in this case. And understand how power structures and dynamics from the discounters and supermarkets to all small-scale producers can be and this is again a transdisciplinary approach, can be used so that we get more healthy food onto the tables in Europe, but also we get a greater awareness within consumers for organic as well as healthy foods. Yeah.
That's really incredible. I feel like we're getting to that space where centers like yours are going to be so important for regional shifts as well. Imagine that a center in Germany can be linked with the center in Austria and Spain. The same way you guys are part of the European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture. I imagine that same knowledge exchanges can be generated through institutions like the academy. And so how do you see this growing going forward? How do you see it influencing even policy going further? Because you guys in Europe are leading in the movement, and we're truly like grateful for seeing those examples of people who are quietly having their feet on the ground, but also really showing lots of great strides. How do you see the academy building up to something bigger that will start knocking on policy doors? Yeah.
I think maybe to the basis of that is you don't have to always be big to be heard. And we're seeing this on the European stage at the moment. That's a lot of diverse actors uniting and coming together do or have a great voice that we need to really properly listen to. And there's big shifts within the European Union at the moment. We just heard the strategic dialogue on the future of agriculture last week, presented by Ursula von der Leyen, our EU Commission head. And there was a milestone in bringing together diverse voices from all areas to understand where the food system is headed to and the future, and give consultancy on that. And with the academy, we really see ourselves being a small lighthouse in an ocean of big lighthouses, and many, not big, but many lighthouses, fostering those conversations that are sometimes not easy to have had and need to be done though. So I think the example is if you sit in a conference room and what are the questions that the audience is too afraid to ask because they linger in the background, but they are actually the important questions to ask. So within the small team that we have, but being this nucleus, we strive in the future as well to act through bringing these pioneers together and having those voices heard that we think, or that we not only think, but that we together gather, that really propel the transformation that is so needed as fast as possible on the whole European stage. Yeah, and being a partner to EARA, for example, is this is how we work. We partner with as many, and we are as inclusive as possible to as many of the incredible European movements, as well as groups that come together as possible, and that for us. So if you are a group out there and a movement that works towards that, please reach out. We are very happy to work with you and seeing how to collaborate. But yeah, it's a time for collaboration to understand that. And this is also something that I've learned over the last years, to foster serendipity, to really see if we come together, sometimes our trajectories and ways are not how we envisioned them before. They are non-linear. They go in all sorts of directions. Do we even know where forward and backward is? I don't know anymore sometimes. But to understand that the power and the beauty within people coming together and sharing their struggles as well as their visions and hopes for the future, there is so much room in between for serendipity to have really amazing movements evolve. So yeah, we are here to provide fertile soil for those to come.
Thank you for being a lighthouse amongst a sea of lighthouses. That's one thing that I'm walking away with, that each person who is active in one way or another in the movement, regenerative, agroecology, permaculture, holistic management, you are a lighthouse in a sea of other lighthouses across the world. And I think the beauty of what we're doing here, we're capturing this recording. There will be a story that will be listened to by, for example, you're talking to me in Zimbabwe, you are in Germany. Someone in another part of the world will also listen to it, and they get a spark that we truly don't have to be big to bring the influence that we need. Movements are made of individuals who are full of fire within them, to show that a thing can be done, a collaborative can be created. I truly honor that truth, and I truly honor that design, and the space within which you guys function. On that note, I would like to just welcome you to say your final remarks. It's this thing is being recorded for World Food Day. Your important message as a person in this stead, standing for your beautiful country and your beautiful continent. Any remarks that you have?
Maybe one that has been for me the sort of my own motivation is it gets really hard along the way, you know, and we have to show a lot of discipline to keep on those topics that are so dear to our hearts together. But the beauty that is seen from regenerating ecosystems and environments and people within them is just the most radiant force and energy that we are witnessing. And if we can foster that, and if we can come together, and we've got the people for it, we have so many amazing people for it, then the getting up in the morning and working on these is easy. And I'm delighted that you are doing this People's Food Summit, and it's beautiful, and I congratulate it and you on it, and it's a joy to watch your space and watch it for the next years. There's incredible things to come.
So much, Josefine. What a beautiful thing it is to connect here. And I hope that sometime soon, things going well, we will meet in your country or my country on regenerated soils, eating farmer-produced foods from our local communities for the thriving of all living beings in nature and in human communities. Yeah, all the best with your work, and congratulations for a beautiful design at the Academy and all the hard work that you guys get to do. And truly, it does get difficult as we go, but I feel like these chats are also like such energy points as well. So when you sit and listen, to know that there's also a small group in Germany that are pulling the same way. And for your own interest, the Regeneration International team, we are also a very small team. But I think sometimes because of passion and, you know, being able to really be available and stretch yourselves, we can all do big things like this, and like you guys are doing big things, even if you're just a small team. So congratulations and thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And can I only give
so
back?
much. Yeah, thank you for your time.
And you're welcome in Germany anytime. Come and visit us.
Yes, I'll remember that.
Hello, I'm Andre Loy. I'm the International Director of Regeneration International, and I'd like to welcome you to what I believe is one of the really important events this year is the World Organic Forum. And I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine, Professor Dr. Franz-Theo Gottwald. And he runs the Academy Schloss Kirchberg, which for me is probably one of the best education institutions I've ever been to. It's a old castle set in just this wonderful rural village in Germany. They held the World Organic Forum there, and the accommodation there was great. All the food was organic. You couldn't get a better venue and a better, how can you say, event. But I'd just like to start, because both of us are educators and work in education, and just for you to talk about the Academy and the importance of education.
Great, thanks for inviting me, Andre. Indeed, the Academy Schloss Kirchberg is dedicated to educating farmers. It's an academy run by 1,500 farmers. Around 1,000 of them are still in conventional agriculture, and 500 are on organic farming, certified organic farming, to the working together with the certifier Ecoland and other certifiers, all around the area. In a way, we can talk about this as a farmers' academy for bringing the bioregion where they all work in to a more resilient and future-fit type of agriculture. And this obviously is a process of development and bringing new knowledge from agroecology, from regenerative aspects to the farmers to improve their ways of cropping and pig farming and dairy, etc. So education is indeed the core focus here. Since we run this World Organic Forum, we bring in all knowledge from all across the world in agroecology, regenerative aspects, and try to inspire amongst these different approaches and bring the best off, so to speak, afterwards to our farmers.
Yeah, I really like your approach that it's there for all farmers, and the whole idea of education is to empower farmers with knowledge on how to change this, because what I found working with farmers is the fear of the unknown. You know, farmers are necessarily conservative because if you do something wrong, you have crop failure and you lose your year's income. So they want to stick to what they know, and the step outside of that for them is very dangerous. So having education to help them take that step, I think, is so important. So what I'm very interested in is this progress, the 1,000 farmers out of the 1,500, the 1,000 that aren't organic. Do you see a change towards more organic practices with them?
We do see a gradual change to more regenerative, nature positive change. Indeed, farming is a highly conventionalized business, and farmers try to stick to their conventional, habitual ways of doing the things, and then they are advised by input companies or the financial industry what to do and where to invest. We do know all these pillars of the old paradigm, but the main thing for us in the academy is to allow them to experience that there are models and different paths to more sustainable ways of agriculture, are bringing a food system into life. Talking about food systems, as we are aware, is a different paradigm altogether, including the ecosystematic part in it. As I said in the first statement, our basic concept in the academy is that we open up the awareness of the farmers to the landscape and the bioregional in terms of a more technical concept, and allow them to understand the economy of what we call an ecology of short distances, because this is in the core of our perspectives on future fit agriculture in the southern parts of Germany. Make use of the ecology of short distances and close the loops in terms of a cyclic process, since this is still quite new to most of the farmers in southern parts of Germany, we really have to educate and get the economy sorted out behind that. What assists us is that we now put in place some measures on CO2 equivalents and talk a lot about climate-friendly agriculture and building up humus and bringing payment schemes for these changes. So let's be real. It's not only about bringing in new ideas from a shifting paradigm towards more regenerative agriculture across the globe. It's also the economy behind that thing, and allowing the farmers to understand that ecology of short distances is the main issue for, or the key to a sustainable economy. This is the crucial thing we work on.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the way you did it at the World Organic Forum, that everything we ate and drank was local. And to me, that was fantastic. And, and there was no shortage of food, no shortage of types of food. It was a wonderful expression of, local economies, local ecologies. The other thing I think is, to me, is really important, you talk about, is getting this shift in farmers. When we formed Regeneration International and put out the idea of regenerative agriculture, we did it because we need to see a change in industrial agriculture, and most farmers are not happy with where they're going with agriculture. You can see it with all the massive demonstrations in Europe, for instance. Farmers out in their tractors are very unhappy. Everybody knows that agriculture must change. We found that, if we said, look, go organic, we'd lose them. But if we said, we need to regenerate agriculture, that's neutral. And most farmers get that and they go, yes, we do need to regenerate it. And what we're seeing globally is this movement now towards more nature positive, more ecological around the world. And, for me, this is what I saw at the World Organic Forum. I thought it was a very good event that way, that there were a whole range of farmers, not just organic farmers, but all there discussing how we can work together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the focus areas where we come together are climate protection on the one hand, and on the other hand, working on biodiversity issues. In practically terms, the biodiversity issues we cover by allowing experiences and paying for that for beetle banks, for example, for integrating different cover crops into a cyclic model of what I call the ecology of short distances, and the climate aspects. As I said, we address by paying for building up humus, for example, and this is what conventional farmers really do understand. They do have biogas appliances, and they gradually come up with what we also call a multifunctional type of agriculture, so that they have different sources of income and can adapt more quickly to the changes in the market. I notice that I talk a lot about the economy in that here, but since the investments are so high in the machinery and in keeping up the buildings in southern Germany, if we don't come up with a sound business case, so to speak, addressing biodiversity, addressing other methods of regenerative agriculture, addressing that farms can become a CO2 sink and not a producer, then we don't win the conventionals. They really want a system which works, and the change they make in terms of their farms are towards system thinking, and I really appreciate that, are towards closing the loops in terms of input and output, and that's a major shift, coming back to work together with local butchers and so forth, bakers, and producing whatever fits for these next step in terms of processing food. And that's where the Academy also assists in creating platforms for exchange between the producers and the next steps, or the producers and whoever could deliver what type of organic input. This is part of an investment. Farmers are not educated to do that on their own, to build up some such platforms for dealing in a regional scope with whatever they can work on in their stables or their fields, create more specific regional trademarks also, so that the customers really can rely on what they get as regional foods. What I notice is that the next generation now coming into taking over the farms is really already quite educated in these cornerstones of a new paradigm. And of course, they know that they can't just follow the ritualized paths of their fathers or even forefathers, and have to come up with what I like to call the ecology of communication amongst farmers, and organize themselves in different and new and appropriate and data-based ways. I'm noticing, since I'm not personally working only in the south of Germany, but in all parts of Germany with different types of farms, running roundtables for more nature-positive solutions, addressing the climate issues consumers now have in mind with dairy products, for example, and also with meat products. This is very tricky now for both production lines, conventional as well as organic. And as we know, also for regenerative agriculture, it would be more advisable to include animals in the system. Of course, not this industrialized farming and feedlot stuff, but in terms of nutrient cycling and so on, we depend on integrating animals, farmed animals here. So there's a lot of practical learnings to do, and try to figure out what type of practice fits to what type of farmer. Not farm. The farmer is and his family the problem. So talking about the ecology of communication, we address all the social issues and the social economical issues behind new types of farms, and taking the whole family into this shift is even more needed nowadays than before. It's all based on dialogue and arguments, and not this patriarchal type. We in a way we notice young farmers being decolonized in a decolonized mind state, so to speak, and but this is really a good assistance to what we are all up for on this globe now as a community. That's why we talk about the World Organic Forum. It's a global community building with different approaches, be it from zero input level like in India, be it for more scientific, elaborate level, talking about regenerating soils, etc. In the European or North American, Canadian approaches, talking about the organic approaches, which we are very much market driven by the big trade chains. So we all have, like I said, three focus area. Learn to work with the landscape, the bioregional thing. Learn to really work on biodiversity and creating resilient systems along these ecology of short distances, and learn to be more climate friendly, so to speak, at this time of the movements coming up, and be more creative to make this change you are addressing, Andrew, from conformity to a type of ritualized old culture of agriculture to a new culture of agriculture with new habits, empowered by new knowledge and by exchange between farmers.
Yeah, look, what you've talked about is very important. Having this diversity and diversity of choices. But the critical one that you started with, which for me as a farmer, I've been farming now for more than 50 years, and I've worked with farmers on every continent. The economics is the key. We see farmers going They're leaving farming because of debt. Like I said, a huge amount of money they need for machinery, for the buildings and all that. They borrow that. And in many cases, the prices they're getting have hardly changed. And farmers are in serious economic trouble. And as a result, we're losing actually globally millions of farmers a year. Just where I am, for instance, about half the farmers, because our local sugar mill closed, a lot of the farmers are now going to be leaving farming, selling their land. And this is the story around the world. In Europe, for instance, we've all seen the massive demonstrations because farmers are struggling. And the key is economics and giving them a viable solution. Without economics, without income, there is no farming. And I think that's one of our strengths, or what you talked about, is showing there are multiple ways forward, not just one, and getting them to rethink their farms and rethink how they can reduce costs, for instance, spending a fortune on fertilizers, pesticides, new markets, value-added markets, maybe for some going organic, getting a premium on, these are all incentives. And to me, I find that is sometimes the strongest, how can you say, making the farm economically viable is the strongest incentive for change.
Definitely, and that's why we also engage with the Academy in political discourses, so that along the line of public money for public or common goods should be the main driver for bringing tax money to the farms. So for biodiversity means for means which protect the water, for means which protect the soil. Public money should be invested, and in the next period of the common agricultural policy frame in Europe, this will become even more important. This is part of the income and has to be part of the income, ideally on a global scale, since each and every government knows that without vivid and viable farms in the country falls short, and and people will even be again and again moving to the cities. This migration things we all have with the huge rural areas in South America, for example, or in parts of Southeast Asia. So allowing a nation to have vivid rural areas, also in terms of culture, education, health system, and all that, needs to bring money from the cities, not only for the products, but for creating public goods to the farms. This is part of the incomes and has to be addressed again and again. Beside the market schemes for CO2 equivalents, for example, to pay for that, which is also another part of income generation. And as we notice in the northern parts, and as well as in China, addressing the energy production, in small-scale energy production, photovoltaic in the country, and so forth, biogas wherever it's possible, not on an industrialized level, but on a systemic smallholder level, that each and everybody can address that, because having small biogas appliances is covering the regional energy demand better than one big thing, with all the grid problems and all that stuff, as we all are aware. So investing here, we do have good examples of involving citizens as investors, or people living in villages, and doing a small scale heat and electricity net, fostered by raw materials from, or rest materials from the farms. These small scale systemic solutions thought in networks within networks. This is the mind shift here. Networks and networks. This is on a quite good way. Sure, the lowering the input and the input costs are essential, and what really troubles me in this respect is how this big trend of digitalization will bring a new shift to the whole future food systems, or future agricultural and food systems. We are all aware that collecting data, processing data, and all that is quite expensive at the beginning in the investment phase. And if these investments and the costs are then put to the farmers, we'll have the next wave of giving up. So this is a history of technology in agriculture. Each major frog leap created a completely new structure, and of course we are aware that these industries producing digitalized solutions are all preparing for future business models here as well. And this is a major threat, to my understanding, to really regenerative agriculture. It's not that BASF, Syngenta, and all the others now call their approaches regenerative. We know this is a part of greenwashing. That's the easy part to be addressed. But the solutions, the parts of Monsanto and others have, and major insurance companies and so forth, for data-driven agriculture, this really puts more trouble into my mind. And also the political frame. Some of our politicians, at least in Germany, now say the future will be like, either you have a sound database on your farm or you lose your license to do farming. It's easily to create a law or a set of laws around all that, and you know what I mean. So we have to be aware about that, and we address at the Academy all these political issues as well during our World Organic Farms conventions, because this is a global trend, and there's no reason for Amazon not to consider agriculture to be part of their future business. You know what I mean?
Look, what you're talking about is, excuse me, what you're talking about, actually, the critical dichotomy. All these technologies are designed for one thing and one thing only, and that is to suck money out of farmers. So these corporations are the biggest corporations. We've had farming for 10,000 years without digitalization, and we don't. What they're proposing, we don't need, On the other hand, we can use this. Most farmers can, and it's to our benefit. And so it's the issue of scale. And you talked about small scale, where we can keep, things like microgrids instead of large, covering the landscape with solar panels. Everywhere you go, on every hillside now is industrialized with wind turbines, huge power lines going through the landscape and just ruining our rural landscapes, industrializing it for power for the cities. And we, everything is involved. When we look at the cost of machinery, farmers go into debt for that, and they, but the machinery companies are multi-billion dollar companies. The same with the fertilizers, the pesticides, the banks, the insurance companies. It's all designed to suck money out. Whereas what you're talking about, which to me is really important, small scale, local marketing, we empower farmers. We actually have farmers in control. They can make the decisions. They can, be in control of their markets, negotiate the prices, get fair prices. And, this is the real difference. And for me, I just want to say that this part of what you're doing is just so important for the survival of families and family farming.
And addressing the involvement of the consumers, making them prosumers, since we are talking about a People's Food Summit, yes, this build the bridges between villages, small cities, even big cities or metropole areas, between food production, food processing, and food consumption. And building these bridges is so necessary, creating awareness, creating new alliances between consumers and farmers, so that there's enough political will behind creating political frameworks, legal frameworks fitting for nature positive solutions, regenerative solutions. And in the end, as both of us, Andrew, are aware, it's type of power play, and it's still open who wins. So each and every move for a people's driven agroecological, regenerative, organic type of food system is helpful here. So I really appreciate what you're doing with your work in the regenerative movement, and we, as you, we really were happy to for having you at the Academy and working together on these lines.
And look, I want to say exactly the same with what you're doing. I think it's so important. And we are actually on the right side of history. The reason why we're winning is we're growing farmers. So if you talk about the organic sector, in the last 10 years, we grew amount of farmers. We grew by 147% in farmers.
Amazing, yeah.
On the other hand, the industrial sector continues to lose millions of farmers every year. So the fact is, their model is causing farmers to fail. Our model is growing farmers. It looks tough, but fact is, we are winning. And I just want to say, you're part of, there's a lot of us around the world. You're part of this trend to empower farmers, to, like you said, to bring in the new generation of farmers. So I just want to say thank you so much. And I really look forward to us continuing to work together because, as I said, we are on the right side of history.
Yeah, so let's grow farmers together. Fine.
Okay, ciao. Tschüss.
Ciao, ciao. Tschüss, yes, yes.